Why newborns startle and cry. A psychological perspective, few experiences are more unsettling for new parents than watching a peacefully sleeping baby suddenly fling their arms outward, arch their back, and erupt into a piercing cry, for no visible reason at all. This phenomenon, often described as startling in sleep or crying out of nowhere, is one of the most common concerns raised in early parenthood. While it may feel alarming, it is deeply rooted in neurodevelopmental biology and psychological processes that begin long before birth. Understanding why newborns startle and cry through the lens of developmental psychology, attachment theory, and sensory processing not only reassures caregivers, but also reveals something profound about the infant mind. The Moro reflex, the body's first fear response. At the neurological core of a newborn's startling behavior lies the Moro reflex, also known as the startle reflex. Named after Austrian pediatrician Ernst Moro, this involuntary response is present from birth and typically fades between 3 and 6 months of age. When a newborn perceives a sudden change, a loud noise, a shift in position, a flash of light, or even an internal sensation like a muscle twitch, the nervous system triggers a rapid, symmetrical response. Arms fling outward, fingers spread wide, and then the arms pull back toward the body, often accompanied by crying. From a psychological standpoint, the Moro reflex can be understood as the body's most primitive threat detection system. It is, in essence, the newborn's very first fear response. Evolutionary psychologists argue that this reflex served a critical survival function in our primate ancestors. A sudden loss of balance or a perceived fall would trigger the infant to reach outward, grasping for the caregiver's body. The cry that follows is not merely distress, it is a distress signal, an urgent call to attachment figures designed to ensure proximity and protection. An immature nervous system in an overwhelming world. To understand why newborns are so easily startled, we must appreciate the radical transition they have just undergone. For approximately 9 months, the fetus existed in a profoundly regulated environment. Constant warmth, the rhythmic sound of the mother's heartbeat, muffled external noise, and the gentle rocking of movement. Birth plunges the infant into an entirely different sensory world, one filled with unpredictable light, varied sounds, temperature changes, and physical contact from multiple caregivers. The newborn's central nervous system is structurally and functionally immature. The prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for executive function, rational processing, and emotional regulation, is barely developed at birth. This means that infants cannot filter, interpret, or modulate sensory input the way older children and adults can. What registers as mild background noise for a parent may be processed by the newborn's nervous system as an overwhelming, threatening signal. Developmental psychologist Daniel Stern described the infant's perceptual world as one of heightened aliveness, every sensation vivid, immediate, and undifferentiated. Without the cognitive scaffolding to contextualize experience, a sudden shift in sensation is inherently alarming. The startle and cry, then, is not an overreaction. It is the only available response to a system not yet equipped to self-regulate. Sleep architecture and the vulnerability of REM. A significant proportion of newborn startles occur during sleep, and this has a clear neurological explanation. Newborns spend approximately 50% of their sleep time in active REM, rapid eye movement sleep, compared to roughly 20-25% in adults. During REM sleep, the brain is highly active, processing the enormous volume of sensory and emotional information accumulated during waking hours. In REM sleep, the boundary between internal dream states and external stimuli is thin and porous for the newborn brain. A small noise, a shift in temperature, or even an internally generated neural discharge can be enough to breach this boundary and trigger the startle response. The cry that follows is not a sign of nightmare or distress in the adult sense. Rather, it reflects the brain's inability to smoothly transition between arousal states. This also explains why newborns who are placed flat on their backs after being held upright often startle awake. The proprioceptive shift, the body's internal sense of position changing, is registered as a potential fall, triggering the Moro reflex even in the absence of any external threat. Attachment theory and the cry as communication. From the perspective of John Bowlby's attachment theory, the newborn's cry is one of the most sophisticated social tools available to a creature with no language. Bowlby argued that infants are biologically pre-programmed to seek proximity to caregivers in moments of perceived threat. The cry functions as what he called a proximity-seeking behavior, a signal evolved to draw the caregiver near, restore felt security, and regulate the infant's overwhelmed nervous system through co-regulation. This is a crucial psychological point. Newborns cannot self-regulate. Their nervous systems are designed to be externally regulated by a caregiver. When a baby startles and cries, they are not being manipulative or demanding. They are doing exactly what evolution designed them to do. The caregiver's response, lifting, holding, rocking, speaking softly, literally helps the infant's nervous system recalibrate. Heart rate slows, cortisol drops, the felt sense of threat recedes. Mary Ainsworth's later research expanded on this, demonstrating that the consistency and sensitivity of caregiver responses to infant distress forms the bedrock of secure attachment. A caregiver who reliably responds to startling and crying teaches the infant's nervous system, over thousands of repetitions, that distress is temporary, the world is safe, and connection is available. This early relational learning is foundational to emotional regulation throughout life. Internal states, hunger, gas, and somatic distress. Psychology does not operate in isolation from the body. Newborn startling and crying is also frequently triggered by internal somatic states that the infant cannot yet locate, name, or understand. Hunger, intestinal gas, reflux, or a need to pass stool can generate sudden waves of internal discomfort that the baby experiences as acute distress. Because the infant has no cognitive map for these sensations, no understanding that hunger precedes feeding or that gas pain is temporary, each occurrence is experienced as immediate and total. From a phenomenological standpoint, the newborn lives almost entirely in the present moment of sensation, without the narrative scaffolding that allows older humans to contextualize discomfort. This is why even mild hunger can produce an intense startle cry response. The baby is not being dramatic. They are experiencing an unmediated somatic signal with no cognitive buffer between sensation and reaction. Conclusion: a mind being built. The newborn who startles and cries in the night is not broken, manipulative, or in existential distress. They are doing something far more remarkable. They are demonstrating a nervous system in the earliest stages of building itself, reflexive, responsive, and exquisitely sensitive to a world it is only beginning to map. Every cry answered, every startle met with warmth, every moment of co-regulation contributes to the slow, invisible architecture of a mind learning what it means to feel safe. For caregivers, this understanding offers something invaluable, not just patience, but genuine awe at the psychological complexity unfolding in those small, startling, crying arms.